Pain is something that we all experience. We all face moments of hurt and hardship, yet our pain does not have to separate us from God and from Jesus. In fact, it says in the book of Psalms that the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. And it's often through those very struggles that we find ourselves drawing closer to God and to Jesus. Jesus knows exactly what it's like to have a human heart and to walk on this earth. He faced enormous suffering. So it's in our suffering that we can find comfort in him, knowing that he has already overcome this world. One of the hardest trials that I faced was a 10-year relationship that tested every part of who I was. And I often found myself being very confused and depressed within that relationship. And I was having a hard time moving forward. I had become complacent. And that's ultimately what led me to press into God and Jesus as intensely as I did. But as I became closer with God and Jesus, I felt, like maybe things would have improved in my situation, or, I would have received more clarity. But I did not find that at first. So I felt like God had abandoned me. Or worse, I thought, what if he was just watching my life unfold and he was just allowing everything to happen and he was okay with it? One day in particular, I was wrestling with my faith. I was telling God that his silence and his lack of direction was deeply hurting me, and I was feeling very hopeless. And if Jesus says to have faith the size of a mustard seed, mine was shrinking down to the size of an orchid seed. My faith was like as small as it could be without completely letting go of it. So that night I went to bed, and the moment that I closed my eyes, I saw Jesus. And at first I didn't realize that it was him, because what I saw was black and white outline of a man holding flowers, and it was very fuzzy, blurry. And I like to consider myself a sane person. I usually don't see things when I close my eyes. I don't have any special gifting or anything. I immediately went into prayer, rebuking anything that is not of God or of Jesus. Yeah, he was still there. And then I started to wonder if it was Jesus, because the image isn't super clear, but it's clear enough to see there's a man standing in front of me holding flowers, and he's trying to speak with me. So I asked him, I said, "Are you Jesus?" And after I asked that, his flowers expanded. The flowers that he was holding, they doubled in size, and his face, he shifted closer to my face. It is very hard to put into words this experience, because it was all, within me, and I'm trying to explain that out loud. But the first thing that he said to me was, he said, "I am so sorry that you are in pain." And that was all I needed to hear for my anger to just completely disappear. And my anger was replaced with this self-awareness of why am I so angry? Jesus is standing in front of me with flowers, so happy to see me, and I've been spending the day just so angry and directing my anger towards God and towards him. So I said, "No, I'm so sorry. Why am I so angry at you? Why is it that I am directing all of my anger and my hurt at you? Because I do not want to do that ever again." So then he started to speak into me. And the first thing he explained to me was, he said, "Your love is conditional, and my love is unconditional. He showed me that throughout my life I had been shown and taught conditional love. And His love and God's love for us is unconditional. And when I come to understand that the fullness of God's love is limitless, it will transform the way that I love and the way that I receive love. The next thing he explained to me was that God's peace will not settle where I am not meant to be. And the confusion and the pain that I felt were not obstacles that I'm supposed to push through, but they were God's signals guiding me towards the truth. He was helping me understand that I needed to embrace self-love and that I should not put my worth and my value in the hands of man, but I should root my identity and my worth in God, and no one will be able to take that away from me. And the last thing he spoke to me was to keep seeking God and Him with an open and willing heart. And after he was done speaking to me, I started to see flashes of different moments in my life and in my childhood where I could see where, specifically where I was taught conditional love and where I didn't feel like I had strong self-worth, and how that led me to not being able to have boundaries with people. And there's just all these little dots starting to connect, and just having that clarity was a miracle in a way, because I could start to do the inner work and start to heal. Again, it's really hard to put all of that into words, especially because this took place a few years ago. But even though that advice and that encounter was unique to me and the pain I was in, Jesus's love for everyone is the same, meeting us exactly where we are, even if it looks different for each person. Looking back on that night, Jesus did not change anything about my physical reality. Everything in my physical life stayed the same, but my heart didn't. My heart and my perspective had shifted, and that became the beginning of the healing and the growth that I needed to move forward. What I've learned is that when you walk with God, He refines your spirit so you can carry what the old version of you never could, because only in the crushing comes the oil. The pain presses out what is eternal. As I reflected on this, I was reminded what Paul writes in Romans 5:3. We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Jesus truly understands us, having lived as one of us. With that, He is more than our Lord. He is our brother. Always remember that our God loved us so much that He humbled Himself to share in our humanity, entered into our suffering, and gave Himself fully so that we could truly have life. Even in our hardest moments, His love is present and available for us. So keep your heart open to Him.